Your grocery bill went up again last month, and it will go up again next month. And the produce sitting in your fridge right now traveled 1,500 miles before you bought it. But here is what nobody at the grocery store wants you to know. There are 13 specific food crops you can plant one time, walk away from, and harvest every single summer for the next 30 years. Not annuals you replant every spring, not vegetables that demand babysitting. Real, productive, edible perennials that come back stronger every year while you sit on the porch and watch them do it. And the one at number 4 is the crop your grandmother grew that almost nobody under 50 has ever even tasted. Let's get into it. Crop 13, asparagus. Let me start with the perennial crop that gives you the longest documented payback period of anything on this list. Plant an asparagus crown this spring, and that same plant will be feeding you in 2055. That is not a typo. Properly maintained asparagus beds in Massachusetts, New York, and Pennsylvania have been producing continuously for over 30 years, and some commercial beds are documented at 40 to 50 years of active harvest. Look for these varieties specifically: Jersey Night, Jersey Supreme, or Millennium. All three are all-male hybrids, which matters more than most people realize. Female asparagus plants spend energy producing seed pods. Male plants pour every bit of that energy into thick, tender spears instead. The yield difference is significant, often 30% more harvestable spears per crown. Asparagus is hardy from USDA zones 3 through 10, covering essentially every state in the continental U.S. except parts of southern Florida and the lowest desert zones. Crowns go in 6 to 8 inches deep in trenches enriched with compost. Spacing is 12 to 18 inches between crowns, 4 to 5 feet between rows. Here is the part that requires patience, and I want to be honest with you about it. The first year you harvest nothing. The second year you harvest lightly for 2 weeks. The third year and every year after you harvest heavily for 6 to 8 weeks straight every single spring. A mature 25 crown bed which fits in a 4 by 12 foot space produces 20 to 30 pounds of fresh asparagus per season. Organic asparagus at most American grocery stores is running $5 to $7 per pound right now. That bed is producing $100 to $210 worth of food every single spring for 3 decades. One technique that separates good asparagus beds from spectacular ones. Stop harvesting around late June or whenever the spears coming up are pencil thin. Let everything else grow into ferny foliage and leave it standing all summer. Those ferns are running photosynthesis straight back into the crown, building the energy reserves that fuel next spring's harvest. Cut the ferns down only after they yellow completely in fall. Skip this step and your bed declines within 5 years. Follow it and you have asparagus on the dinner table when your grandkids are in college. Crop 12, rhubarb. Rhubarb is the perennial crop that survived the Great Depression, fed entire farm communities through both world wars, and then quietly disappeared from American backyards somewhere around 1985. Most people under 40 have never grown it. Most people under 30 have never even tasted it. And that is one of the strangest gardening losses in American history, because rhubarb is one of the most reliable, most productive, most cold-hardy food plants you can put in the ground. Look for Victoria, Canada Red, or McDonald. Victoria is the heirloom workhorse, productive in almost any soil, deep red on the stalk base fading to green on top. Canada Red is the variety to plant if you want intense crimson stalks for pies and preserves. McDonald handles wet soils better than either, which matters if you're in the Pacific Northwest or anywhere with heavy clay. Hardy in zones 3 through 8, rhubarb actually requires winter cold to trigger proper dormancy, which means it thrives across the upper Midwest, New England, the Mountain West, and the entire northern tier of the country. Below Zone 8, performance drops sharply. The plant simply was not built for sustained heat. One crown produces 2 to 4 pounds of stalks per season starting in year 2, climbing to 8 to 10 pounds by year 4. A small patch of 3 crowns gives you 24 to 30 pounds of fresh rhubarb every spring, year after year, for 15 to 20 years before division becomes necessary. And division gives you free plants. One mature rhubarb crown splits into 4 to 6 viable new crowns, each one a complete, fully productive plant. One critical warning: eat the stalks only, never the leaves. Rhubarb leaves contain oxalic acid in concentrations high enough to cause serious illness. The stalks are completely safe and have been eaten in this country for over 200 years. Cut the leaves off in the garden, leave them on the soil as mulch, and bring only the stalks inside. 2 crops in, and I want to ask you something honestly. How many times have you walked through the produce section, looked at the prices, and thought, this is getting ridiculous? Drop a comment below right now and tell me the one fruit or vegetable that has gone up the most in your store. I read every single comment, and I genuinely want to know what's hitting people hardest. And while you're down there, hit subscribe before you forget. This channel puts out a new video every single week built specifically for older Americans who want to grow real food and stop being entirely dependent on a grocery system that raises prices every other month. Subscribing costs nothing. Missing the next video costs you information you could have used. Crop 11, Sorrel. Most American gardeners have never planted this, and most American cooks have never used it, and that is a gap European grandmothers shake their heads at. In France, sorrel soup is a spring tradition older than the country itself. In Eastern Europe, green borscht is unthinkable without it. In your American backyard, it grows like a weed and asks for absolutely nothing in return. Look for French sorrel or common garden sorrel. French sorrel has slightly milder, more tender leaves and is the variety most American chefs prefer. Common sorrel is sharper, more aggressive, and more cold-hardy. Either works in zones 3 through 9. The flavor is genuinely unique. Bright, tangy, lemon-like, with a sharpness that comes from natural oxalic acid. You eat sorrel raw in salads, you wilt it into eggs the way you would spinach, you blend it into soups and sauces. It tastes like nothing else in the garden. One small patch of sorrel, just 6 to 8 plants, produces continuously from early spring through hard frost. Cut the outer leaves, the plant pushes more from the center within a week. By midsummer, you are harvesting weekly without ever depleting it. A single planting feeds a household for 10 to 15 years before the patch needs renewal. Sorrel emerges weeks before any other green in the garden, often pushing through ground while there is still snow in the corners. For gardeners in the upper Midwest and New England who are starved for fresh greens after a long winter, sorrel is the first food the garden gives back. That alone justifies its place on this list. Crop 10, Sunchokes, also called Jerusalem artichokes. Plant sunchokes once, harvest forever. That is not marketing language, that is a warning. These tubers are so prolific, so determined, so completely unstoppable that experienced gardeners plant them in dedicated beds and never let them anywhere near the main vegetable garden. Once sunchokes establish, you will be eating them for the rest of your life whether you planned to or not. Look for Stampede, Red Fuseau, or Clearwater. Stampede is the earliest variety ready for harvest in mid-October in most zones. Red Fuseau has a smoother skin that peels easier and a slightly nuttier flavor. Clearwater is white-fleshed, the best variety for raw eating in salads where the texture sits somewhere between water chestnut and apple, hardy in zones 3 through 9. Sunchokes are native to North America, which means they were built for American soil, American winters, and American neglect. They handle drought, poor soil, hard freezes, and complete abandonment. The Lewis and Clark expedition ate them in the Dakotas in 1804. Indigenous communities cultivated them across this continent for centuries before that. A single 4 by 4 foot patch produces 15 to 25 pounds of tubers every fall. The plants grow 8 to 10 feet tall and produce small yellow sunflowers in late summer, which means you are also feeding pollinators while the food crop develops underground. One technique that matters: harvest after the first hard frost. The cold converts the inulin in the tubers into sweeter, more digestible sugars. Sunchokes harvested in September are starchy and slightly bland. The same tubers harvested in late October or November are sweet, crisp, and outstanding raw or roasted. Patience changes the entire flavor profile. Crop 9, Horseradish. Buy a 6-inch root cutting at a garden center this spring for about $4. Stick it in the ground sideways 6 inches deep. Walk away. 3 years from now, that single $4 root has produced enough horseradish to supply your kitchen for the rest of your life. The math is almost embarrassing. Look for Big Top Western or Bohemian. Big Top Western produces the cleanest, straightest roots, which matters when you go to harvest. Bohemian has a sharper, more aggressive flavor profile preferred by traditional cooks and anyone making real prepared horseradish from scratch. Hardy in zones 3 through 9. Horseradish handles temperatures down to 30 below zero without protection. Minnesota gardeners, North Dakota gardeners, anyone in the upper tier of this country, this is your plant. A mature horseradish patch produces 3 to 5 pounds of fresh roots every fall. Prepared horseradish at the grocery store runs $4 to $6 for a small 6-ounce jar. Your annual harvest produces the equivalent of 30 to 60 jars of prepared horseradish for free. The flavor of fresh grated horseradish is something almost no American under 50 has experienced. The bottled stuff at the grocery store has been sitting in vinegar for months, losing its punch by the day. Fresh horseradish, grated 10 minutes before you eat it, will clear your sinuses, water your eyes, and remind you that food used to actually taste like something. Mix it with sour cream and a pinch of salt for steak, stir it into mayonnaise for sandwiches, add it to tomato sauce for shrimp cocktail. One root crop, dozens of uses, decades of harvest. Crop 8. Walking onion, also called Egyptian onion. This is the only food plant on this list that literally walks across your garden on its own. The science behind that is genuinely fascinating, and it is the reason this plant has been grown continuously in American gardens since the colonial period. Walking onions produce small bulbils, baby onions, at the top of their flower stalks instead of seeds. Those bulbils get heavy, the stalk bends over from the weight, and the bulbils plant themselves wherever they touch soil. The plant takes one step every season. Plant one cluster this spring, and within 4 years you have a steady, slowly migrating colony producing onions on multiple levels at once. Hardy in zones 3 through 9. Walking onions handle cold that would kill most ordinary onions. They are among the first green things to emerge in spring, often pushing through ground in February in zone 7 and warmer. You harvest 3 things from one plant: green tops in early spring, identical in flavor to scallions and ready when nothing else in the garden is. Bulbils from the top in midsummer, perfect for pickling whole or using like pearl onions. Underground bulbs in fall, similar to shallots with a sharper, more concentrated flavor. A single 3-foot row of walking onions feeds a household with green onions and shallots from March through November, replants itself for free every season, and never needs replacing. I know gardeners in Vermont who have walking onion patches their grandmothers planted in the 1960s, still producing in the same beds 65 years later. 6 crops in, and let me say something directly. If you are still watching this video, you are not someone who quits when the work gets real. You understand that the best things in a garden, like the best things in life, take a few years to mature and then they pay you back for decades. That is exactly the kind of gardener this channel is built for. Hit the subscribe button right now if you haven't already. Hit the bell. The next video releases in 7 days, and it goes just as deep on a topic that pairs directly with this one. The gardeners who subscribe in the middle of a video are the ones who actually come back. Be one of them. Crop 7. Sea Kale. Most American gardeners have never heard of this plant, and almost nobody is growing it, and that is a complete accident of agricultural history that I want to fix in the next 90 seconds. Sea kale, Crambe maritima, is a perennial brassica native to the rocky coastlines of Europe. The Romans ate it, the English cultivated it heavily through the 1700s and 1800s. Thomas Jefferson grew it at Monticello, and then somewhere around 1920, sea kale fell out of American gardening fashion and never quite came back. The flavor is unlike anything else in the cabbage family. Tender white shoots in early spring taste like a cross between asparagus and the heart of a young cabbage, with a sweetness most brassicas never achieve. The young leaves work like spinach. The flower buds taste like sprouting broccoli. The flowers themselves are edible, honey-scented, and gorgeous on a plate. Hardy in zones 4 through 9. Sea kale forms a substantial mound of blue-green leaves about 3 feet across by year 3, with deep taproots that handle drought once established. Harvest in March or early April, just as the spring shoots emerge. Cover the crown with a clay pot or a 5-gallon bucket for 2 weeks before harvest to blanch the shoots tender and white. That technique is called forcing, and it is the same method British kitchen gardeners have used for 250 years. One mature plant produces 1 to 2 pounds of blanched shoots every spring for 20 to 25 years. 3 plants supply a household generously. And almost nobody in your zip code is growing it, which means you are bringing back a food crop your great-great-grandparents likely ate and your neighbors have never seen. Crop 6, Good King Henry. Yes, that is the actual common name, Good King Henry. Chenopodium bonus henricus, named after a 17th century English king, eaten across Europe for over 1,000 years, still grown in monastery gardens in France, and almost completely unknown in modern America. It is a perennial spinach. That sentence alone should make you pay attention because the one reliable complaint about regular spinach is that it bolts and dies the moment summer heat arrives. Good King Henry does not bolt, it does not die. It produces tender, mild, spinach-flavored leaves from early spring through hard frost every year for 20 years from a single planting, hardy in zones 3 through 9. Plants reach 18 to 24 inches tall and slowly form a clumping colony about 2 feet across. The young shoots in early spring can be cooked exactly like asparagus and are arguably the best part of the plant. The leaves work as a direct substitute for spinach in any recipe. The flower buds eat like tiny broccoli. One plant gives you 3 distinct vegetables across the growing season. A small patch of 6 plants produces continuously from April through October in most zones. The leaves regrow within 7 to 10 days of cutting. By midsummer, you are harvesting more than a household can use, which is genuinely the opposite problem most gardeners have with annual greens. If you have a shady, slightly damp corner of your yard that has defeated every vegetable you have ever tried to grow there, this is the crop you have been looking for. Good King Henry actually prefers partial shade and moist soil, the exact conditions that kill tomatoes, peppers, and most other annual vegetables. Crop 5, Perennial Bunching Onion. I covered walking onions earlier. This is different, and the difference matters. Bunching onions, Allium fistulosum, do not walk. They clump, they thicken. They divide themselves underground into denser, more productive groupings every single year, and they live for 20 to 30 years in the same spot without complaint. Look for evergreen hardy white or Welsh onion. Both are commonly available from quality seed companies. Both are productive across zones 3 through 9. Welsh onion in particular has been continuously cultivated in Asia for over 2,000 years, which tells you something about its longevity as a food crop. The harvest model is what makes this plant exceptional. You do not pull the bulb, you snip the green tops as needed, leaving the white base in the soil. The plant pushes new green growth from that base within 10 days. Done correctly, you can harvest from the same clump every week from March through November without ever depleting it. A single 4-foot row of bunching onions provides a household with fresh scallions year-round in Zone 6 and warmer, and from March through November in Zone 5 and colder. The plant goes dormant in winter and emerges as soon as soil temperatures hit 40 degrees in spring. By the time most gardeners are starting onion seeds indoors under grow lights, your bunching onion patch is already on the dinner table. Every 5 to 6 years, the clumps get crowded and benefit from division. Dig the entire clump in early spring, separate it into individual plants, and replant. One mature clump yields 30 to 50 individual divisions, which means you are creating new bunching onion patches across your yard for free, or sharing them with neighbors who will then owe you favors for the next decade. Crop 4, Saltbush, also called saltwort or atriplex. This is the crop I teased at the beginning of the video, the one your grandmother almost certainly grew and that almost nobody under 50 in this country has ever tasted. And the reason for that disappearance is one of the more depressing stories in American food history. Saltbush, specifically the perennial species Atriplex halamus and the closely related auraki, was a staple green across rural American kitchens from the 1700s through the 1920s. It grows in poor soil, in salty soil, in the kind of brutal conditions that kill almost every other green vegetable. Coastal communities relied on it. Frontier farms grew it. Then commercial spinach production took over, supermarkets standardized the leafy green category, and saltbush quietly vanished from American gardens in a single generation. The flavor is remarkable. The leaves taste like spinach with a built-in seasoning, naturally salty, slightly mineral, complex in a way that makes most modern greens taste flat by comparison. You eat the young leaves raw in salads, you sauté the larger leaves in olive oil with garlic. You add them to soups and stews where they hold their texture better than spinach ever does. Hardy in zones 5 through 10. Saltbush forms a small shrubby plant 2 to 4 feet tall, completely drought-tolerant, immune to most pests, and productive from late spring through hard frost. A single plant feeds a household generously through an entire growing season. 3 plants provide more food than you can keep up with. For anyone gardening in coastal areas where salt spray kills ordinary vegetables, anyone in the Southwest dealing with alkaline soils, anyone in the Mountain West with poor sandy ground, saltbush thrives in conditions that would kill almost everything else on this list. It is the crop nobody is selling because it grows from cuttings, lives for 15 to 20 years, and produces more food than any commercial seed company can monetize annually. Now you know. Crop 3. Sea buckthorn. Sea buckthorn berries are one of the most nutrient-dense fruits documented in the scientific literature. Vitamin C content per gram exceeds oranges by a factor of 12. The berries contain 190 different bioactive compounds. Russian cosmonauts ate them on space missions. Tibetan medicine has used them for over 1,200 years, and almost nobody in America is growing them in their backyard, even though the plants are completely cold-hardy across most of the country. Look for Sunny, Botanica, or Lord. All 3 are productive female cultivars. You will need at least 1 male plant per 6 to 8 females for pollination. Hippophae rhamnuatus is wind-pollinated, which means the male simply needs to be within about 50 feet of the females. Sea buckthorn is a bush growing 8 to 12 feet tall, with silvery green narrow leaves and bright orange berries that cluster along the stems in fall. Hardy in zones 3 through 8. Sea buckthorn handles temperatures down to 40 below zero. It fixes nitrogen in the soil through root nodules, which means it actually improves the ground around it as it grows. It tolerates poor soil, drought, salt, and almost any growing condition you throw at it. A mature bush produces 15 to 20 pounds of berries per year starting in year 3 or 4. The berries are intensely tart, almost too sour to eat raw, but they make extraordinary juice, jam, syrup, and pressed oil. Sea buckthorn juice sells in health food stores for $25 to $40 per liter. Your harvest produces dozens of liters annually for the cost of picking time. One harvest tip: the berries hold tightly to the branches and are easier to pick by cutting whole branches and freezing them. Once frozen, the berries shake off cleanly. Doing this in early November after the first hard frost concentrates the sugars and softens the tartness. Generations of European growers have used this exact technique for the same reason. Crop 2. Walking stick kale. Most American gardeners have never seen this plant in person, and the people who have never forget it. Walking stick kale, also called Jersey kale or cow cabbage, grows 6 to 12 feet tall on a single woody stalk, produces edible leaves continuously for 2 to 3 years from one planting, and has been cultivated in the British Channel Islands continuously for over 200 years. The leaves taste like a mild, sweet kale, more tender than commercial varieties, with significantly less of the bitter chew that puts most people off ordinary kale. You harvest the lower leaves continuously as the plant grows taller, working your way up the stalk over the season. By year 2, the plant is producing more leaves than a household can consume. Hardy in zones 7 through 11. In zones 5 and 6, walking stick kale grows as a tall annual rather than a true perennial, but still produces extraordinary amounts of food in a single season. In the Pacific Northwest, the Mid-Atlantic, the Southeast, and the Pacific Coast, the plant lives 2 to 3 full years before going to seed. When the stalk eventually finishes its lifespan, it dries to a hard, woody pole. Channel Island farmers historically cured these stalks and used them as actual walking sticks, hence the name. You can do the same, or you can break them down and compost them. Either way, the plant has fed you for 2 to 3 years before retiring. The visual effect of walking stick kale in a garden is genuinely striking. A row of 6 to 8 plants creates a 10-foot tall edible hedge of blue-green leaves that stops every neighbor who walks past. 3 plants produce enough greens to feed a household generously through every cold weather month of the year and into the next. Crop 1. Hazelnut bush. The single best long-term perennial food crop available to American homegrowers today is one almost nobody plants, even though it grows wild across half this country and produces a high-protein, high-fat food that stores for over a year without refrigeration: the hazelnut bush. Specifically the American hazelnut, Corylus americana, or its productive hybrid varieties. Look for Theta, Yam Hill, Jefferson, or for cold climate growers, the Arbor Day Foundation's hybrid hazelnut. American and hybrid hazelnuts are far more disease-resistant than the European varieties commercial growers use, and they produce reliably in backyard conditions where commercial hazelnut groves would fail. Hardy in zones 4 through 9, hazelnuts grow as multi-stemmed shrubs reaching 10 to 15 feet tall and equally wide. You need at least 2 different varieties planted within 50 feet of each other for cross-pollination. A productive home setup is 3 to 4 bushes spaced 15 feet apart, occupying roughly the footprint of a single large tree. Production starts in year 4 to 5, climbing to 8 to 15 pounds of in-shell nuts per bush per year by year 8. A 4-bush planting produces 30 to 60 pounds of hazelnuts every fall, every year, for 40 to 50 years. Hazelnuts at the grocery store run $8 to $12 per pound shelled. Your annual harvest is producing $240 to $720 worth of food per year, every year for half a century. Hazelnuts are also one of the most calorie-dense foods you can grow on a small piece of land. They store for 10 to 12 months in their shells in a cool, dry place without refrigeration. They are dense in protein, healthy fats, vitamin E, and magnesium. For anyone serious about long-term food security, this is genuinely the most strategic perennial crop you can plant. The bushes are also beautiful. Yellow catkins drape from bare branches in late winter, providing some of the earliest pollen for native bees. Fall foliage turns deep gold and copper. The bushes function as a privacy hedge, a wildlife habitat, a pollinator support system, and a major food crop, all from the same planting. Bonus: 3 rules that determine whether everything you plant this season actually pays off for 30 years. Rule 1. Soil preparation is permanent. Most perennial food crops live in the same soil for 2 to 3 decades. Whatever organic matter, drainage correction, and pH adjustment you do at planting time is the foundation for everything that follows. Add 3 to 4 inches of finished compost worked deeply into the planting area before installation. Test your soil pH and adjust to the range your specific crop prefers. Do this once, do it right, and the plant rewards you for 30 years. Rule 2. Mulch is not optional. Every perennial on this list benefits dramatically from 3 to 4 inches of organic mulch maintained year-round. Wood chips, straw, shredded leaves, all of these regulate soil temperature, retain moisture, suppress weeds, and slowly break down to feed the plant. A perennial bed left bare loses 50% more moisture, grows 4 times as many weeds, and produces measurably less food than the same bed under proper mulch. Rule 3. Division is free expansion. Most perennial food crops on this list multiply themselves every 4 to 6 years. Asparagus crowns, rhubarb roots, sunchoke tubers, sorrel clumps, walking onion bulbils, bunching onion divisions, sea kale crowns. Every division you take is a complete, fully productive plant identical to the parent. One mature bed becomes 2 beds, becomes 4 beds, becomes a food production system that scales itself across decades. You are not just planting once, you are planting an inheritance. You just spent half an hour learning 13 perennial food crops that will be feeding you in 2055. Crops that produce more food per dollar invested than any annual vegetable on the market. Crops that ask almost nothing from you after the first 3 years and reward your patience with decades of harvests. That is not just a gardening video, that is a food security plan. If this video gave you even one crop you are going to put in the ground this season, subscribe right now because next week's video goes even deeper on a topic that pairs perfectly with this one. Every single week this channel releases information at this level, real, specific, zone-aware, experience-based content built for Americans who are tired of paying grocery store prices for food they could be growing in their own backyards. Hit subscribe, hit the bell. The gardeners who subscribed at the start of this video are already ahead. Catch up with them right now. And before you click away, drop one comment below. Tell me which of these 13 crops you are putting in the ground first this season, and tell me what zone or state you are gardening in. I read every single comment, I respond to as many as I possibly can, and your answers shape every video I make next. This is your season. Your soil is warming up right now. Go plant something that will still be feeding you when your grandchildren are grown. I will see you in the next one.